Okay, welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Jessie, and today we're going to be walking you through setting up, customizing, and playing with notices and slips using the template toolkit. Today your host will be Lucas, and I'm going to pass it right over to Lucas and let him get started. Lucas?
Hello everyone, and thanks for coming today. Going to show you some pretty simple and hopefully useful tips for notices and slips using template toolkit. So let's get started. I am going to share my screen. Jesse, can we see that?
Yeah, it's looking awesome. And if anyone has questions, please feel free to use chat and Q&A. I'll monitor and pass those through to Lucas.
Okay, so for today's examples, I'm mostly going to be looking at the issue slips, and we'll do a couple examples with hold slips as well. I'm doing those ones because they are the simplest to set up and test and kind of see changes as we walk through them. A lot of what I'm going to say, though, for these two slips are definitely applicable elsewhere with other slips. So let's get started with what is Template Toolkit. This is Template Toolkit's website, templatetoolkit.org. So go check that out. This is a great resource if we're kind of laying out what Template Toolkit is, the kind of some of the things it can do. It is a, as it says here, flexible and highly extensible templating processing system, which is written in Perl. So yay, perfect for Koha. It is much, we use the Template Toolkit to render most of the pages that you see in Koha. So it's perfect for doing things like notices and slips. So another great resource to check out is this Koha community notices and slips library. There's a ton of stuff here. A lot of it is not in Template Toolkit. It's our older, what I call hungry alligator syntax. So we're going to ignore that today. If you go to the bottom, you will see some examples of things done in Template Toolkit. So just looking over some of this stuff can give you a great idea of some of the things that you can do to notices and slips with Template Toolkit. So let's jump over to Koha, and I am going to go to Tools and Notices and Slips. And I'm going to pull up an issue slip, like I said, because these are real easy to test. So let's take a look at an issue slip real quick. If you haven't messed with yours or had your support company change yours, you're going to see something like this in your issues and slips. We're going to see these two bracket hungry alligator syntax a lot. But what we're going to be working with is Template Toolkit, which often has this sort of weird looking syntax where we have two square brackets and two parentheses, and then the Template Toolkit stuff done inside of that. So that said, let's take a look at one of our notice and slips, an issue slip of a patron with a couple checkouts. So if I take a look, it's pretty basic. Checkouts are listed. So we're going to just try to redo some of this without the hungry alligator syntax and do it in Template Toolkit. So A lot of these can be changed. A lot of these are going to use a very similar sort of syntax. We see borrower titles here. I'm going to get rid of the hungry alligators. I'm going to replace it with the template toolkit. It is a bit different. So borrower's title will not work. But what will work is a borrower title. So if I do something like that and we go back and we look at our slip again, nothing should have changed because the same piece of information is coming over. So so when we look further into our issue slip, in the old syntax, what we use to loop through each of these checkouts are this HTML like checked out tags, and you see it ends here. So anything in between it gets looped over for each checkout. So what we're going to do here is replace all of this with a template toolkit syntax. So we don't actually need to use these anymore in template toolkit because we're going to do it a little bit differently. We're going to use our template toolkit syntax, and we're going to say for each checkout in borrower checkout. And anytime in template toolkit we do something like a for each, to use the similar looking syntax to tell it that we're at the end of that thing. So what I've done here is just, instead of using that HTML like checked out tags, we're going to replace it with this. And we can put everything inside there. But we also will want to probably replace all of this with template toolkit type syntax. So it's pretty easy. It's going to be mostly the same looking. I am going to add a little bit extra here, which may seem confusing. But since we're inside of checkouts, we're going to be looking for each checkout's item's bibliotitle. I'm going to do that for each one of these. And a lot of times with template toolkit, when we're going to eliminate the pluralness here where it says items, we wanted to just say checkout item barcode, because we're looking for this exact item in sort of the singular case. You see up here we said for each checkout in borrower check outs is what we want to say. So when we use the S, we're talking about each one in the big loop, and when we say it in the singular sense, we're looking at that particular. And I'm just going to copy this one over. So if we've done this right, we can save. And what's nice now in Koha is we can click on this little arrow right here and we can say save and continue editing. That way it doesn't close this, and we can kind of test things and go back and forth. So Now, if I go over here, print slip, it looks like my loop is working. And again, not much has changed in the slip, except you can see that the date due is maybe not formatted quite as we want it. It has the timestamp on the end, and this may not be the date format that we're looking for, but we'll get to that in a second. Okay. So we could do the same exact thing with the overdues. I'm not going to go through that right now, but we could. So what's nice about Template Toolkit is it allows us to kind of add a little bit more, do quite a bit more things than we could with the hungry alligator type syntax. So one example that I've done a lot for libraries is the title might be lacking. So if here, let's go back to our slip. Let's look at the titles again. You can see we've checked out the C programming language and X power tools. That is the 245A. That is all that is showing. Often we may want more to show there. So let's take a look at one of these checkouts. This power tool one, I believe I added. Yes, I added a 245B. So there's some syntax in Template Toolkit which doesn't exist in the hungry alligator version of things. That I'm going to put in here right next to my title. So I have checkout item biblio title right here. I'm going to add another piece on this same line. Let's see. It's definitely a little bit more confusing, but if you know this syntax, it's going to be easy to play around with you see here it says subfield 245B. So it's checkout item biblio metadata dot record dot subfield 245B. It's quite a mouthful, but if you know this, you can begin to insert all sorts of pieces of metadata from the MARC record into your slips. So let's save that and continue editing and just take a look back at our slip. Cool, and now we see that X Power Tools has the 245B added. Awesome.
Awesome. So Donna asks, we can use any field in the MARC record.
I don't know if I could say we can use any field in the MARC record, but it's definitely worth experimenting with. I think lots of things will work here. I can't say for sure that every piece of information in the MARC record would be able to be exposed this way. Okay, so what other cool things can we do with Template Toolkit that we maybe can't with the old syntax? Let's go back and look at our slip one more time. One, we may not like this date due with this big ugly formatting right here. So we are going to use another module. Let me get on the right page here. that is available to us. So in Template Toolkit, we can add some functionality, and we're going to do a couple of these today, where we use a module that's available to us in Koha to do cool things. In this case, at the top, at the very top, I'm going to add this syntax. It says use Koha dates. This is nice because we can easily format things to have dates be formatted exactly like they are in Koha. So here I have my checkout item, checkout date due, in its interesting format that we don't like. So I'm going to add inside the Template Toolkit syntax, after I've called what I want to display there, I'm going to add the pipe, and then I'm going to add $signs, Koha, uppercase D, dates.
And Lucas, we have a question from Todd, and I think he's referring to when you typed in the use Koha dates. Okay, and he did. He asks if the hyphens are necessary at the top, where you have like open paren, %, dash, space, use Koha dates. And he's asking if those are necessary.
Oh, that's a good question. I see these used a lot, and I don't think they are, but let's find out. So let's look with it, and you'll see that my date has been turned into the nice Koha date, the US formatting, May 9th, 2020. Cool. But to answer that question, let's just give that a try. So I think this will work just fine, but I could be wrong. Yeah, it works. Cool. So there is some other modules like this Koha dates that we're going to look at here in a bit. And that might be when we move on to the hold slip. But before we do that, we're going to look at a couple other things here on this issue slip. So what's great about Template Toolkit is that we can add a lot of things that may not be available to us with the old syntax. So I'm going to jump over to schema.kohacommunity.org. So this is the database schema for Koha. We're going to look at 1905, since that's what most of us are on at the current time. And we can start to look at like what kind of things we can add to slips. Not all of these are available, and some of the notices and slips have different things available to them than others, kind of depending on the nature of that notice or that slip. My advice here to everyone is to just kind of play around with this and see what works and what doesn't. Like items and borrowers and stuff like that is going to work in the issue slip, of course. Things like action logs and system preferences, probably not, as it doesn't make a ton of sense. Let's just we'll go look at the items table. Here, almost all of these pieces of information should be available to us in Template Toolkit. So I'm going to just try to do something maybe a little different in my issue slip. Like go down to the bottom. We'll say right here, And I can also, and I encourage people to use HTML in here to format their slips. So let's say holds, or maybe we'll say your holds. Maybe we want to add to our issue slips the holds that you have. So we're going to do another loop, since now we can make our own loops up, since we're not stuck in the overdue or the checkouts. I'm going to say for each hold, borrower holds, and then again, I usually write my whole loop before I go inside of it and do stuff. So I now have for each, and then I ended it. And here, let's just put hold. And outside of the template toolkit, brackets and percentage signs things, I can put a label. So I'll put title. So let's see if this works. So if we go back to my patron here, you can see that I have one thing on hold. So let's go ahead and go print and print our slip again. And ta-da! We're showing holds on the issue slip. Okay, let's do one more fun thing with our issue slip before we move on. So I'm going to paste in, this time I'm just going to paste this in. I'll go through some parts of it. Just wanted to show kind of some of the ability of the cool things you can do. So, oh, okay, I just put a bunch of stuff in there. And I'm just going to save and show you what I've done, and then we'll come back and try to explain it. Okay, so at the top you see what I've done here is it says items checked out today 2. So this is just a little way of adding to the slip the number of items you've checked out that day. Maybe helpful for circulation staff. Now let's go back and see what we've done. Okay, you'll see that I again have, well, first I've wrote a variable in Template Toolkit, and I named this one myself. So just like in any other programming language, I've just said today's issues is equal to 0. So we're starting it off equal to 0. At that point, we're going to start a for each loop like we did below. So for each checkout and borrower's checkouts, we're going to do some stuff. And again, we're going to make some of our own variables here. I have an issue date and a renewal date, and you'll see why here in a second. And then what I'm doing here is instead of using the Koha dates, I'm using a Unix date to format the date to look like this. And the reason, and I'm getting the checkout issues date, and I'm getting the checkout's last renewal date. And then I'm formatting it to be year, month, day. And then I'm coming down here and I'm making a variable called today. And you see this one says date now. So I'm formatting today's date just like I am for the issue date and the renewal date. The reason I'm wanting to do this is because I want to see if these have been issued today or if they've been renewed today. So I'm going to check today's date against these issues dates and renewed dates to see if they're the same thing. So I'm going to say if the issue date is equal today, and then template toolkit, inside of an if, these two pipes together mean or. So I'm saying if the issue date is today, or if the renewal date is today, then the total issues, which we set to 0 up here, we're just going to add +1. And then after we're outside of all of our loops, all I have to do is say, I put a label here, items checked out today is today's issues. And we get what we saw earlier, that. So I added that one to kind of show some of the cooler or like dynamic things you can do with Template Toolkit that you certainly are unable to do in our older syntax. So there's a lot of stuff you can do. If you have an idea, there's probably a way to sort of implement it into your issue quick slip or any other slip for that matter. Okay, so I also wanted to take a look at a hold slip. So let's see. I've before we started, I went through and triggered. I have a hold slip that is triggered right here. We don't have to go through that process. Also, when I'm testing notices and slips, I like to get one up like this. That way I can just I don't have to go recapture this hold in order to look at this. I can just continue refreshing this every time I make a change. So
that's a good tip, Lucas.
Yeah, it's nice when you're testing because you might have to go back and forth many times.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Okay, so again, this slip has no template toolkit in there. Actually, I've added a couple things right here where all I've done is replaced the old syntax with the new. There is some confusing areas right here. The old syntax says reserves waiting date. So let's turn that into template toolkit. And then let's go over here. And that actually, that's down here, and that didn't work. I'll try reserve waiting date. And that's also not going to work. So this, where a lot of the times I can take these things and say borrower's email is just going to be in template toolkit syntax, borrower email. In this case, it's a little weird, but it's hold that waiting date. So let's give that a try. Okay, there we go. But again, now that we've switched, we have the a weird looking format on that date. So we'll deal with that. But first, I want to deal with something else that can annoy you with slips. You see here we have a blank list item. So that kind of looks ugly. Let's go take a look at that. And that's item call number. And that's because this particular thing that I put on hold doesn't have a call number. So there's an easy way in Template Toolkit to deal with that. So right here, I'm just going to say Template Toolkit type syntax if, and I can just copy this from here. So I'll grab that. And then I'm going to say if, then do this thing, and then end. So what I'm saying now is just if there is an item call number, display the item call number. So now if we go look at this again, we're going to see that since I don't have one, it's just going to skip that entirely, which looks much, much better.
Good tip.
Okay, and let's do something a little cooler here too with this one. So we're going to sort of access something a little bit different. Again, we're going to put this at the top just to make it easy, though you can move this to anywhere. We're going to say borrower account dot balance. I'm just going to put that in there to start. I often do this where I'll just, if I'm going to start working with something, I'm going to just make sure that what I'm doing actually displays something in Template Toolkit. And see, it does. There's a 0 up there now. Okay, cool. So let's go back to our patron. Their account balance is 0. So let's create a find for them. Okay. And then let's go back over here. Oh, and you see that's changed to 22. Okay. That's not super helpful all by itself. But now I'm going to turn this into something like, I'm going to say if the balance is greater than or equal to, we'll say 20. And again, I like to just build my whole loop out. Okay, so now in here we can say if it's greater than 20, we can put a message on here because this is the hold slip. So maybe this is something for staff to see. And then let's say account balance. And we'll go back in here and I'll just copy that. I'm saying if it's greater than 20, we're going to show this part of it. If it's not, this is just going to remain blank. Ah, cool. So just to make sure that works, I'll come back in here and I'll go to this $22. Let's go to make a payment. Let's pay that. So now Ronnie Ballard has 0 fines. And nothing displays. So let's go back in and make him a new fine. Okay, so that's pretty good, except for account balance 22. First off, I probably want a colon right there. So account balance 22 is okay, but I'm going to again use a module. This time, I'm like the Koha dates one, I'm just going to say use price. Again, I assume these are optional, so let's take those out. So now we're using price. So I'm going to do the same thing like I did with Koha dates. I'm going to put a pipe here. I'm going to say price. And I'm going to save that. Okay, that looks better. Although I would still probably go to right here, right outside of my template toolkit syntax. We can add the $sign. And there, that looks better. Okay, and then I also would like to just talk a little bit about HTML and styles inside your slip. So what's pretty cool about most notices and slips is I could go to the bottom of them and I can put some style tags in here. Oops. Like that. And now within these style tags, I can write CSS. So for CSS to work, we got to have good HTML classes though. So let's go back up here to my if with my my warning. So inside here, if I do this warning, I'm just going to add a div with a class of called fine alert. Wherever I open a div, I have to close a div. Okay. Great. Now I'm going to go down in here, and since I have a class called fine alert, I can use CSS to maybe give this background of red. Now that might not be great for something that's a printed slip, but you get the idea. Okay, cool, awesome. Now though, what we've written here might be too big for a thermal receipt printer. So this is where we can write some more useful CSS there for that fine alert class. I could say width is, and in web development, I tend to shy away from using the inches measurement in CSS, but I think when we're dealing with notices and slips, it can actually be useful because we usually know what the size of our slip is in inches. So now that's a little less wide, so it might fit on your slip, but you can mess with that. And those are my tips and tricks for notices and slips. Are there any questions?
Not yet, Lucas, but we'll keep that chat open and see if anyone has some follow-up questions. And we will post the examples that Lucas provided today during the webinar online with a link to the recording. And as always, if you have questions, you can always communicate with us by sending in a ticket or jumping on the Slack channel, giving us a phone call. Thanks, Lucas. You're getting some thanks in the channel chat.
Awesome.
Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Lucas, thanks for a great presentation and several of those great tips and tricks for using Template Toolkit to customize notices and slips. Have a great day, everyone, and stay safe.
Yeah, have a great day, everyone. Thanks for attending.
Thanks, Lucas.